Well, I'll bring up another great player, and that is Matthew Judon, who we've talked about before. That was my homework assignment that Booner assigned me to bring to the table, is bring a realistic candidate. I brought Matthew Judon. He was going through some contract, issues, and then we see him tweeting cryptic stuff out. And now this is on A to Z Sports. I believe, real quick, I want to give credit. Mike Payton wrote it, so shout out to Mike Payton. But it is basically the odds, the betting odds for.
It's a beautiful thing.
Which it's good to see, boys. And I'm going to pull it up here so you guys can look at it. But Matthew Judon, I want to see who I want you guys to see. And this is Bet Massachusetts, so this is out
in Boston.
Yeah, in Boston. But here's the odds, and we'll get to them in a second. But the article reads right here: after a recent cryptic tweet that pointed to the Patriots not be willing to work out an extension for Judon, there's been some belief that Judon could be traded by the Patriots before the start of the season. If that happens, the Lions are considered one of the favorites by Bet Massachusetts. Look at the odds. Seattle comes in as the lead with the best odds, plus 500, 16.7% chance. The Atlanta Falcons are second, plus 550. 15.4% chance. The Chicago Bears are third, plus 550, tied for second, I should say. Tied for second with the Falcons at plus 550, 15.4% chance of landing him. And then the Detroit Lions come in at third, plus 600, 14.3% chance. And then the New England Patriots, it's kind of a drop-off. I mean, is
that for him to stay in New England?
Yeah, plus 1450.
He's gone, like, essentially. Plus 1450, I'll take that bet just in case he stays. That's nuts.
And then the field is plus 215, which is like, okay, well.
It doesn't make sense for New England to sign him just because in a rebuild mode, and that's a guy that he's not going to be making a difference for your team 3 years down the line. And in the 3 years prior to that, you're going to have to pay him at least a pretty penny a little bit. But if he goes to Chicago, that would be, I think, a terrifying defense to face. I mean, it probably, I understand he's not Khalil Mack, but that defense would probably be up there as far as when Khalil Mack was in Chicago, and they were winning games pretty handily with Mitchell Trubisky and company. So the Bears, whenever they're good, it's because they have a great defense, and I think if they somehow land Matthew Judon, that'd be like the thing that the Lions really don't want to deal with, because then you could put Montez Sweat on one side to keep Panay busy, and then you got Matthew Judon and Taylor Decker, and I think Judon would at least win a couple of those battles. So send him to Atlanta if it's not in Detroit, but he's a perfect fit in Detroit. I know some people say he's not the scheme fit that he wants, but that's a guy that can fit in any scheme you want him to.
I mean, look at the projected trade real quick. Lions get Matthew Judon. Patriots get 2025 fourth round and 2025 sixth round from the Bucs pick, which is Mike Payton's proposed trade, which I actually love.
I would do it in a heartbeat. I think the thing, too, with, like, if you make that trade, I think if it is available, like, Brad should be going all in for it, because, like, the biggest hole on this team is right now, to me, is defensive end. And it's like, yeah, you've already brought Marcus Davenport in. You have James Houston. You have the players. Like, we do know that. But we just don't know, like, if they're not, like, if they're going to be healthy. We don't, like, there's, like, a big question mark there. And I think that's the biggest question mark on your football team right now is those guys. So it's like, all right, if there's an all-pro or Pro Bowl defensive end who, when he's never injured, like, last year was the first time in, like, 4 or 5 years, He missed like 2 games his whole career before last year. And he goes out there and he had 15.5 sacks, 12.5 sacks back-to-back years. You bring him in, you're instantly, now you have Marcus Davenport with him. You have James Houston with him. You instantly as well have probably one of the best edge rush duos throughout the whole entire NFL. You have 2 guys that can go out there this year and go get 15+ sacks in the season with Aiden Hutchinson and Matthew Judon. Like, he's coming off a 15.5 sack season. And you have Hutch, who's expected to go out there and get 15+ sacks as well this year and compete for Defensive Player of the Year. That changes your defense. Like, you get one of the best defenses in the NFL at that point with the secondary reload. Like, you have to go out there and make this move. And, like, I guess my question is like, you're going to have to pay him too. So is it worth, like, hey, going forward, like, in my mind, if you do make the move, like, yeah, you're going to have to extend him. All right, now you have Matthew Judon and Aiden Hutchinson for the next 3 or 4 years in that Super Bowl window. And they're not going away. And they're both there for the long haul. And you have DJ Reader and Ali McNeil in the middle. That's your defensive line for the next 3 or 4 years for your Super Bowl runs. I think that's like, it's a no-brainer. I think you have to do it. And at the same time, like Klotz's point, you don't want to send him to Chicago. You don't want to allow that to happen. And to me as well, the Falcons are a playoff team. You don't want to allow him to go to the Falcons. And who was the other team as well? The NFC team, the Seahawks. Seahawks probably aren't a playoff team, but they're in the NFC too. Like you do not want him to go to another NFC team. And I know that was kind of, I was against, like not against, but I wasn't as upset for Chase Young going to the 49ers. I was like, whatever, like we're still going to go to the NFC Championship game. But for me, it's, hey, you do need a D end, and that's like, you need to go out there and make a move. I think that's like a big move to make. That's a Super Bowl winning move right there.
Yeah, I think people were talking about when the Trey Hendrickson rumors were kind of swirling around for the day or two that it was. I think if you bring in Matthew Judon, especially with DJ Reader in there, I think that's a little bit more of an upgrade than it would be to Trey Hendrickson, because I think Judon's better against the run. I think by himself, if you were to put DJ Reader and Matthew Judon on the team together, Judon's going to go get you 16 sacks probably, because if you look at the course of his career, he was just going on a tear. Going off the injury, I probably expect a little bit of a decline, but then when you add in Aiden Hutchinson on the other side, that's probably, I could see Hutch getting 15 sacks and Judon getting 11, 12 sacks.
I mean, easily. And I said this when we first talked about it like weeks ago, that you don't even have to. And if I'm talking to Judon, his agent, if I'm Brad Holmes, now you're entering a place as an organization where you're competing for players in your conference, because you don't want to, you want to separate yourself from the rest. And if you get other teams that, like the Seahawks, or not saying the Seahawks would get Judon, they're immediately on the Lions level, but they get a little closer. And same with these other teams that are trying to, the Falcons, they'll get a little closer. You want to distance yourself. And that's why, if there are NFC teams that are asking for, or they're trying to trade for Judon, you have to be in that conversation. If it's a fourth and a fifth, hell yeah. Give it up. Booner, I'm 150% okay down and okay with a rental. I think a rental makes so much sense for where the Lions are as an organization. You need someone that can come in, help you win a Super Bowl right now. And how do you increase your value as a player? Play on the biggest stage. Go to a contender. I mean, if you're going to play on a team and try and get a max deal, go play with the Lions in a state where you grew up, for a team that needs a player like you, and a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. Because, I mean, if they go out and win it, the Lions win a Super Bowl and you're a part of it, your legacy in
forever.
Detroit, it's already cemented. But in the league, you're going to have teams knocking on the door, giving you the money you want anyway if you come play well. I just think it's more enticing for both sides. I think it makes sense for both sides. I think from Judon's perspective, it makes a ton of sense. The Lions, the fit, where they are as an organization, it just, the culture, it couldn't be much of a fit. Couldn't be more. There's a side, and there's the people who are like, well, the Lions have Davenport, they have James Hughes, they're fine.
Oh, like, Jesus Christ.
But the thing is with that is, it's like, yeah, you have those guys, but you can always get better. And that is a move that gets you to a Super Bowl defensive line. Like, yeah, you still might be able to, like, and I still think, like, hey, say they don't make the move, they're still going to go win the Super Bowl and compete for a Super Bowl. Like, I'm not saying if they don't make the move, the season's over. No, like, if they don't make the move, they're still competing for a Super Bowl. They're still a contender. But you can separate yourself even more from the other contenders if you make moves like that. Like, just because you have one of the best rosters in the NFL doesn't mean you can't add to it and even get better. Like, that's part of the game, is trying to separate yourselves from these other teams. Like, you want to get as far away from the 49ers as a roster as you can. Or if you think they're a little under them, you want to get as close as possible. Like, you have to do that. That is one of those moves that to be made. Yeah, you might have Davenport and Houston. Yeah, they might be able to still win the Super Bowl with those guys. That doesn't mean you can't get better. Like, you can get better at a position. It's the same thing for wide receiver for me.
Agreed.
I think you're lying to yourself and just trying to convince yourself that everything's going to be okay if you think that Marcus Davenport's the solution outside of Aiden Hutchinson. Marcus Davenport's never been a guy to steal the show as a player, let alone been able to stay healthy. So I think there is going to be some issues that arise with Marcus Davenport, but that's why you sign him for a one-year deal. But to Booner's point, like, if you can upgrade from Marcus Davenport or James Houston and you want to win a Super Bowl, then you absolutely do it. Even if I know he's not available, but Jeff always brought up Leonard Floyd. Even if it's for a player of that caliber that gets released in training camp, you go and get that guy, at least to bring him in and see how he looks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Steve Lehman says Lions could possibly have the #1 offensive line and a top 10 defensive line. That's a Super Bowl, boys. I mean, we talk about this defense, and I went through it. This was I think about 2 months ago, might have been. I think it was in May. I might have made this video, but it was detailing the defensive line and the importance of that if you want to win a Super Bowl, and sack numbers every single year to teams that won the Super Bowl. I think quarterback play is undoubtedly, and we talked about the 3 pillars of success, head coach, quarterback, and GM, which are very important. But when you talk about the defense, What is super important is getting after the quarterback. And if the Lions get Judon, a double-digit sack guy, they're going to be up at the top of the NFL in sacks.